Books are indeed my passion. Hence, writing this sermon has been a joy. I have bookcases all around me as I type. And as I'm here today, you can see the bookcases. The bedroom includes a bookcase and a table piled high with books I am currently reading or will soon read. In addition, I have a library room with 5 filled bookcases, a study with 6 bookcases on the upstairs landing, books in the attic, and shelves of cookbooks in my utility room. I am what is known as a bibliomaniac, and I know there's at least one other bibliomaniac with us today, and that's Michael Myers-Jawn. I read the New York Times book review every week, so I know what is new and can add titles to my to-buy list. I was a university professor for 34 years, and what led me to the teaching profession was my love for books. My book addiction began when I was a child. I was given books as presents from my parents. The book, A Year Without a Summer, a gift from my mother, jumps into my head as I write. But before that, I had large books with glossy covers, with stories for every day of the year. When I was a little older, I obtained my first library card at the Dixon Homestead Library in Dumont. I borrowed lots of books, including Lorna Doone by R.D. Blackmore, a childhood favorite of mine. A story about Lorna Doone, a girl who is kidnapped and raised by a band of bandits. There is speculation that Lorna Doone cookies might have been named after Lorna, but there is no proof about this. My father often took me to the library in West New York, where I would peruse the bookshelves and sit and read. Once I was given a weekly allowance, I went to the small Woolworths in Dumont and purchased books, including Lassie, Little Women, The 5 Little Peppers and How They Grew, Heidi, Black Beauty, and so many more of the 59-cent books with colorful cardboard covers. My family's working-class rented house was the only one that had a bookcase, to my knowledge. There, I would read my father's books, including The History of Mankind by Henrik van Loon. My father had scientific and medical books about human sexuality in his bedroom closet. And at times I would sneak into the closet when he wasn't around and read snippets from these books, advancing my sex education. My mother wasn't a reader, but she never admonished me for reading. When I was a young teen, it was my father who took me to Bamberger's department store in Paramus and let me buy 1 paperback book a week. For a while, I was fascinated by the books by Ayn Rand and read everything that she published, including The Fountainhead. Today, Rand's philosophy is abhorrent to me, but then I found her to be a very interesting writer. My favorite classes in high school were my English classes. And when I went on to college, I majored in English and did the same in my first master's degree program. At Columbia Teachers College, where I earned my doctorate, my major was the teaching of reading and writing with a concentration in peace education. All the years that I taught, I used whole books of literature, mostly nonfiction in my women's and gender studies classes, and in my writing classes, I had students read memoirs and novels. When I taught in a summer writing program for underprepared incoming first-year students, I had the students read 3 books in 6 weeks, including James Baldwin's If Beale Street Could Talk, Alice Walker's The Color Purple, and Jamaica Kincaid's Annie John. Some students told me this was the first time that they had ever read an entire book. Today, many college libraries are replacing their books with online books, but I think and hope that actual bound books will always be here. Books have an incredibly long history. Humans began to develop writing systems in the 30th century BCE, before the Common Era, in ancient Mesopotamia. And the oldest book, the Etruscan Gold Book from Bulgaria, dates back to 600 BCE. It is made out of 6 sheets of 24-karat gold bound together and includes illustrations of a horse rider, a mermaid, a harp, and soldiers. Another book, the 500 BCE Piri gold tablets, was found in Italy in the 20th century. The first pre-colonial African literature is from the 4th century. The best known is the Kebra Nagast, or Book of Kings. The Sinai Bible from Egypt is dated between 330 and 360 CE, Common Era. Ethiopia has the Garima Gospels dated between 330 and 650 CE. The oldest surviving European book is from 7th century England. It is the St. Cuthbert Gospel, which is the Gospel of John. The Book of Kells from Ireland, written in Latin, heralds back to 800 CE. The invention of block printing in China between 618 and 907 CE was an advance that made it a bit faster to print. The oldest known printed text, a Buddhist book, the Diamond Sutra, is from 868 China. But some scholars believe the I Ching, printed around the same time, was the first book. I first encountered the name Sai Shinagan, a Japanese gentlewoman, when I taught about the history of diary writing. In the 990s, she kept a diary known as a pillow book, which is a blend of short narratives, personal musings, and lists of observations and experiences. Many of her descriptions revolve around poetry. Further advancing printing between 1041 and 1048, the Chinese inventor Bai Xing created the world's first known movable type system. Then, in 1455, Johannes Gutenberg designed and built the first mechanized press in Europe. He used it to print the Gutenberg Bible. Much later, it was in the 1830s that paperback books made their debut in England and Ireland, and making books available for so many. Crossing the Atlantic, the first book printed in North America was the Bay Psalm Book in 1640, a Puritan hymnal. The rest is publishing and bookstore history up to the present. Then, in the late 1990s, the world of printed material changed dramatically again. In 1981, the internet was invented. The World Wide Web was launched in 1991, and Wikipedia made its appearance in 2001. Now we can research using our computers. This is how I did most of my research for today. In 2007, the Kindle iReader made books available on a screen. Reading for pleasure is a delight for so many. The English author Neil Gaiman says, "We have an obligation to read for pleasure." What a wonderful thought. I don't believe that reading is ever a guilty pleasure. Some people have their favorite genres, romance, and read books by Jane Austen or Danielle Steele. Others like mystery and read Arthur Conan Doyle and P.J. James. Horror lovers read Stephen King and Anne Rice. If you have a taste for crime, there's Agatha Christie and Richard Wright. Science fiction aficionados can read Ursula Le Guin, Octavia Butler, and so many more. Fantasy lovers treasure J.R.R. Tolkien. Our former minister, Paul Dadenhoff, loves to read and reread Tolkien. And then there's also J.K. Rowling, who writes fantasy. Historical fiction is written by Toni Morrison and Anthony Doerr. And there are so many more genres. It has been said that fiction is the lie that tells the truth. Great words, aren't they great words? My preference is for memoirs. Michelle Obama and Frank McCourt are two of my favorites in this genre. Parents and other adults start infants with pleasure books, such as Goodnight Moon and The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Children begin their reading experiences also for pleasure. Mo Williams' Pigeon books are a popular series for young readers and are favorites of my young grandchildren. Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus is one of the 7 titles. Then there are the Curious George books and the Madeline collection. Elementary school children enjoy Charlotte's Web, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, and so many more. Books for preteens include Are You There, Me? It's God, It's Me, Margaret, The Bridge to Terabithia, A Wrinkle in Time, and the list goes on. Preteens through adults enjoy the Harry Potter books and the Hunger Games. At one time or another, all of us have referenced books for knowledge and information. Most of us were schooled in the era of encyclopedias. And some of us had encyclopedia sets at home, and others went to the library to use these books in order to write our reports on a variety of topics. In the 1950s, there was the World Book Encyclopedia, which was advertised with the question, what makes one child smarter than another? And an arrow pointed to the World Book Encyclopedia. I was happily surprised to see that both of the children on the advertisement poster were girls. Then the Book of Knowledge Encyclopedia came out in the 1960s. There also are single volume books of knowledge which children and young people might reference today, including the Knowledge Encyclopedia published by the Smithsonian, the Knowledge Book published by the National Geographic, the Ultimate Book of Knowledge by Reader's Digest, and we can't forget the Book of Unusual Knowledge. For the adult audience, there is Knowledge and Information, the Potential and Peril of Human Intelligence. And for the business-minded, there is the Complete Idiot's Guide to Knowledge Management. Many people, including myself, read books for spiritual sustenance. Raised as a Lutheran when I was a child, I read Bible stories and still have the book of Bible stories given to me as a gift by a Sunday school teacher. When I was in confirmation class in the Church of Our Redeemer in Dumont, I memorized the names of every book in the Old and New Testaments of the Bible, a book I often read. When I went off to college, my spirituality branched out, and like many students who attended college in the 1960s, I read The Prophet by Cahill Gibran and Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, the story of a young man's spiritual quest in India, where he found spiritual fulfillment through simplicity. Then in more recent years, like others in this congregation, I read the acclaimed Eat, Pray, Love, One Woman's Search for Everything Across Italy, India, and Indonesia by Elizabeth Gilbert. Gilbert ultimately finds balance between earthly delights and divine transcendence. We are all familiar with the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, and some of us have read his most popular book, Peace in Every Step, The Path of Mindfulness in Everyday Life, about the need to live in the presence. A book that would have particular appeal for many UUs is Waking Up, A Guide to Spirituality Without Religion by Sam Harris. Harris explores the scientific roots of spirituality. And who in this congregation doesn't like Rumi, the 13th century Sufi mystic from Iran? His book, The Soul of Rumi, focuses on the bliss that comes from being completely alive. One of my very favorite spirituality readers is Annie Lamott. Almost everything Notes on Hope is a must-read and reread. Probably, like almost everyone here today, I didn't expect aging to come with so much stress and anxiety. What happened to the myth of the golden years? For those of us who need to release this stress and anxiety, we must read The Seeker's Guide by Elizabeth Lessig, which addresses releasing stress and anxiety. Everyone in this congregation is familiar with the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, since Reverend Sonia talked about the agreements during 4 services. Many of us have found these agreements to be very helpful in our everyday lives as we travel our spiritual paths. Today, as at times in the past, we are faced with book banning. The first book banned in the United States was in the American colonies when the book, New English Canaan, was banned by the Puritan government in Massachusetts, as it was considered a heretical critique of Puritan customs and power structures. Then there was the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice, founded by Anthony Comstock in 1872. Among its mottos was, "Books are feeders for brothels." Comstock was instrumental in the 1873 passage of the Anti-Obscenity Act, which remains on the books today. It prevents the U.S. Post Office from sending through the mail books and other materials deemed to be lewd, indecent, or obscene. It includes topics of birth control, sexuality, and reproduction. The act is being used today to try to prohibit the oral abortion medication mifepristone to be sent through the mail. In 1976, schools in Indiana and Alaska banned the American Heritage Dictionary because it contained inappropriate entries, including the word bed, due to its use as a verb in slang in such ways as, "I want to bed you." In 2006, a parent group in Kansas set out to ban the book Winnie the Pooh because talking animals are a religious abomination and an affront to God. Charlotte's Web was banned for the same reason. The Texas Board of Education banned Brown Bear, What Do You See? By Bill Martin Jr. because the author was mistakenly thought to be the Bill Martin who wrote Ethical Marxism, the Categorical Imperative of Liberation. In 2010, a Virginia school district banned The Diary of Anne Frank because it contains references to sexual longings and for passages which could be imputed to condone homosexual sex. In California, the Culver City School Board demanded that an edition of Little Red Riding Hood be removed because the cover depicted a bottle of wine in Miss Hood's basket for grandma, and the board thought it would cause young children to abet drunkenness. As recently as 2016, To Kill a Mockingbird has been removed from school libraries because it has a frank discussion of Black on white rape, later shown to be a false accusation, and profanity is in the book. The list of currently banned books is long. 1984 by George Orwell has been the most frequently banned book. How very Orwellian. Others include Catcher in the Rye, The Color Purple, Harry Potter, Of Mice and Men, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Tango Makes Three, a picture book, which tells a true story about two male penguins in the Central Park Zoo who take turns sitting on an egg and hatch and raise a baby penguin together. Other books include How to Be an Anti-Racist, Being Jazz, My Life as a Transgender Teenager, Lucky, a memoir about rape by Alice Sebold. It's Perfectly Normal, Changing Bodies, Growing Up, Sex and Sexual Health is another banned book, as well as is All American Boys, about police brutality and two poor Black boys. 19 Minutes by Jodi Picoult is about a school shooting, and the book has been banned. Fun Home, a family tragic comedy by Alison Bechdel, tells the story about her closeted gay father and that she comes out as lesbian. We're familiar with the banned book, The Handmaid's Tale. Beloved by Toni Morrison. The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini includes a rape scene and is banned in some places. The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie is a memoir about poverty, sexuality, and bullying. And then there's The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, which includes race issues, profanity, and explicit content. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison tells about child molestation, incest, and drunkenness. And we shouldn't know about that, right? And that book has been banned in libraries and high schools. Out of Darkness by Ashley Hope Perez is about a Mexican-American girl and a Black boy in the 1930s. And the book includes racism issues and sexually explicit content. All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson is written by a queer Black kid in New Jersey. And the book contains sex and profanity. And then there's Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe, which was the most banned book in 2021 to 2022. And it includes gender identity and sexuality and explicit illustrations depicting sexual discovery. During the 2021 school year, more than 1,600 books were banned from school libraries. The bans affected 138 school districts in 32 states. Texas and Florida led the nation in book bans. No surprise there. Just about any day, you can pick up a newspaper or read an internet news feed and read about book bannings or the censoring of a librarian or teacher for a particular book on a shelf. On April 26th of this year, that's last week, the Record reported the story about a librarian being targeted because of a book in the library collection. The librarian, Roxana Russo Caivano, in Roxbury, New Jersey, was accused of allowing pornography in the high school library. The campaign centers on the book Genderqueer. The book has been approved by the state as part of its sex education and gender identities curriculums. Roxbury residents have labeled her a child predator and accused her of luring children with pornography. but the high school librarian is fighting back and is suing the residents for defamation. The targeting of librarians and libraries defies the words of Henry David Thoreau, who extolled the library as a glorious wilderness of books. Moms of Liberty, sounds dangerous, is a national nonprofit whose mission statement says it is dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their rights at all levels of government. I am sure this organization is not empowering parents who want to allow their trans-identifying children to take puberty-blocking hormones. I have focused on book banning in the US, but perhaps the most infamous act began in 1935, when book burnings were carried out on a large scale in Nazi Germany. Fortunately, the First Amendment protects Americans from an outright banning of books by the US government. Thank you, First Amendment. A group of residents in a small Texas county are fighting for the right to have challenging material on bookshelves. They argued that the 17 book removals violated citizens' First Amendment rights, and a judge of the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Texas ordered the county to return the books to their place, while a lawsuit over the banned books by another group of residents proceeds. The books include Maurice Sendak's The Night Kitchen, It's Perfectly Normal, Changing Bodies, Growing Up, Sex and Sexual Health, Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. They call themselves the KKK, the birth of an American terrorist group, and additional books about LGBTQ issues. Just shocking to read about the titles of these books. In conclusion, our fourth Unitarian Universalist principle is to affirm and promote a free and responsible search for meaning. Books are an important source for that search. Thank you.
If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.